Hello and welcome to the 1776 Syndicate. You've got myself, Jim Riley, and Rod Kuntz on tonight. We have decided not to have a guest tonight because we're right around the corner from the elections. And there's a lot of moving parts right now that we thought we'd take some time to discuss what's latest in the news and really what we need to be doing as citizens and as Americans as it relates to our own cities and across the country. So Rod, I wanted to bring up a couple news topics that are in the cycle today and get your thoughts, maybe weigh in on it. I see we've got a guest on as well. She's welcome to weigh in too. But the New York Supreme Court overturns the vaccine mandate and grants those workers to get to come back to work and back pay. Imagine that.
Well, I don't think that's a far stretch. I think a lot of us felt that that needed to be done anyway. I'm just sad that it's just the city workers.
Yeah.
This needs to happen in the private sector. Big corporations need to step up and call their people back right now so that they can minimize their damages. You know, at this point, they haven't done punitive damages, it's just back pay. But I'll tell you what, with this precedent being set, big corporations, woke corporations, better get on the train and they better start making some wise business decisions about bringing their people back, giving them a good incentive to come back so that they can avoid some punitive damages, because that's where this is headed. This is setting a really good precedent, you know?
Well, I think what's interesting is that the CDC basically said being vaccinated does not prevent an individual from contracting or transmitting COVID-19. That's where the ruling came from. And I can't imagine that we're not going to see a whole bunch of lawsuits across the country. And I really hope that's the case, because our military, our men in blue, our firefighters, they all need retribution for being laid off. And like you said, punitive damages. I mean, just think about the level of stress that we've heard about in the last couple of years from, people that are in the military or their officers. They were worried about losing their jobs and all these other things. Some of them may have even quit. What happens to them? So I'm hoping that this court ruling will set a foundation for people to establish some lawsuits across the country.
I think it will. It definitely is bringing some national attention to it. The media can't ignore this because it happened in New York.
Yeah.
So it is a big story and it's newsworthy. It's going to start the narrative is changing, and that's a good thing. But we are just on the tip of unraveling this mess. And we've got a lot of work. All of us as citizens need to still be on the phones, on our computers, writing emails to our legislators and telling them, push for this, push for what's right, keep it in the news. We have to still do our part. Just because somebody else has made waves doesn't mean we have to stop banging our cymbal.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thing about our shortcomings as humans. We allowed this to happen, and maybe not you and I and some of the people on this call, but we allowed this to happen. Our gut instincts told all of us that this isn't right. That why should we take a vaccine that was rushed through the process? Why should I be laid off from my government job because I don't want to take a vaccine? Why don't I have an exception, whether that's religious or medical? All of our gut instincts told us that this was wrong. And here we are. That's being proven right now that it wasn't the right thing. So I think this serves as a good reminder that we need to stick to our hearts, stick to our gut instincts, stick to the Constitution, and push back sooner so that this doesn't happen to us again. So I'll get off that diatribe because I could probably talk about it all night long, but I know it's hits home for so many people across the country. I'm glad to see that it was in the news cycle today. Yeah, the next thing I want to talk about, and we'll just brush over this because it's non-committal, but I noticed that at the Trump rally over the weekend, Trump stated that I guess I'll just have to do it again in relation to running and winning an election. And, I've mixed emotions about that. I love what he did for our country. I am concerned if he does run again, what will happen. Is it going to be another dead presidency because they're going to attack him for 4 years if he were to run? So it's going to get very interesting in the next couple of weeks as we go through this election cycle and what announcements will come after.
Yeah, and for us to second guess, Donald Trump is a savvy, wise. he's got his finger on the pulse, and he may be moving this piece on the board with no intention of becoming, the next president, but he's forcing the issue. And what that may do is if we have enough, if we do have a red wave and we've got enough people set up in the right places, it wouldn't surprise me if he immediately backed off and backed somebody else for president. I don't think he wants to go back into that again, but he's strategic and he's thoughtful and he knows the machine. He knows the swamp and he knows what he has to do to get them to squirm, to get their ugly little heads to pop up. You saw it today with Hillary Clinton. She's already become, again, an advocate for election denying. She's saying it's already set up that we're going to steal, the Republicans will steal the 24 election. So that narrative is already being laid by the far left. Yeah. And I consider her far left. Yeah. So, Donald's aware of that and he's doing his part to do his narrative. So we'll see what happens. And the bottom line is we have to vet and vote for the best candidate that presents itself. And he may very well be the best when we get to that stage. Who knows? No crystal ball, but I have faith in the process, sort of.
Yeah,
we won't go down the 2,000 mules thing yet, but right. I used to have faith in the process.
Well, at least we know what their plan of attack was. It's probably been changed. I want to talk about one more thing, and then I want to get into your hard topic for the night, which is complacency, which I think is a great topic. So this red wave notion, right? What's interesting is I'm talking to some of the treasurers today for some of the candidates within our own county here in Flathead. And, everybody, all the Republicans are up like a +6, a +8. And what I found very interesting as part of the conversation today is that in Whitefish, Lynn Bennett is actually an unknown at this point. And what's good about that is that in the past, it has always been, there's no way a Republican's going to win in a city or a district like Whitefish. And as of today, it's an unknown because she does have a fighting chance to win that area. And I find that fascinating. So when you look at a red wave and all these +6s and +8s, I think we're seeing a little bit of this in the backyard. And I think that district's going to be a real indication about what might happen in the future because Whitefish is about as liberal as it gets in the state of Montana. And I'd be real curious what people are seeing across the country in their own backyards, like we have Whitefish. So what are your thoughts, Rod?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting because I look at Whitefish as being the microcosm of the Flathead Valley, right? And I look at the Flathead Valley as being the microcosm of Montana, and Montana being the microcosm of the United States. And I don't know if you follow Donald Trump Jr. on Twitter, but he had a picture of the electoral map again. I think it was the electoral map of how much of the U.S. voted red and how much is blue. Mm. And if you look at the media, all the mainstream medias, including social media, they want us to think that we are marginal, that Republicans, the red is marginal, like we're 5%, right? When in fact, we're probably like 75% nationwide. And I look at Whitefish that way too. The people in power, the people who have sought out and established themselves in the political arena in Whitefish, making the decisions, the alignments with different 501c3s, et cetera, they are in fact blue, all right? And they would like everyone to think that they represent the voices of everybody there, when in fact they don't. There's a lot of red around Whitefish. There's a lot of red in Whitefish. It's just not dominated. That business and political climate has been dominated by blue, but that doesn't mean the people themselves are. Yeah. This is still a republic. This is our country. And I think we just need to encourage people to get out and literally vote. They have to, because they are in the majority, but we're being voted, our policies are being voted as if we're not. And that's where that shift needs to happen. Yeah. So I think that Whitefish is already red. I guess that's what I'm saying. It just hasn't voted that way out of complacency.
So I want to talk about complacency tonight because this platform is about educating people that are running for office and what you need to do to run for that office. And really, and Rod, we've talked about this before. What happens if you run and you're not elected? And I know we've spoken about this recently, and I think that that's where complacency plays a role too, because oftentimes we've seen it. People run, they don't get elected, they go back to complacency, back to running their lives, and they forget all about the work that needs to be done. Where you've got others that are running to the finish line. Here at home, I had a conversation with my wife last month. They said, look, we can't volunteer for any more political activities. I mean, we're racking up 20 to 40 hours a week between the two of us in politics. And this morning she comes in with the application to be an election, counting judge down,
Right.
the ballot judge. I thought, wow, okay, you got one more thing on your plate, but I love and respect that about her, that she's not willing to be complacent at any level, and she sees that need. And I would love for more people to see those needs and understand that complacency is what got us to where we're at. And I know you wanted to talk about this. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I could go on and on. I think I'm going to backtrack first before I dive into that, because I'm going to address a comment that came in here from Ms. Claridge, where she said, I was talking about being negative on the process, and do I have a belief in that system anymore? And she put up faith. We have to have faith in our freedom, and that faith comes in our Constitution as well. So I do have faith that our founding fathers set up the best system in the world if we follow it. So I do have that faith. You're right, and that's what keeps me coming back and keeps me involved. And people need to. Speaking of complacency, I'm going to tie this in now. People need to dig in and find their reason why. What is your reason? It can be faith in our Constitution, faith in our freedom, faith in your family and the health of your family and your children, and faith that the government's going to leave you alone and not be tyrannical or dictatorial. And the only way that's going to happen is if we, in fact, get involved and stay involved. And so for the people who have lost elections, I understand. It's like losing, I should say, not just a game. It's like losing the Super Bowl because you put everything into it, or a world championship. You've put everything into it. It's the big one. It's the Daytona 500. You lost that one. You didn't just lose the prelims. But it's not. All of this is preliminary. All of this is helping you learn more, grow more, reach more people, increase your network, right? And build yourself out so that you can, if not run for the same position again, find another way to get and stay involved. There are tons of boards to get involved in, to serve on. Find another way to serve. Find another group of people to connect to that are like-minded and will keep you motivated. We have to stay motivated, and we have to stay on. We can't wait till our check engine light gets on again. We have to keep the fuel above half a tank. We're going into winter, right? Never let your fuel go to under half a tank in the wintertime. Always have for more. Keep it on full. And
Well,
if we do that, go ahead.
I want to interject real quick because you touched on something that I think is important. It's almost just like the business call we had yesterday. We're going to be pitching a major company, and we know that a year and a couple of months down the road that a decision maker will be in place that will be able to give us probably a yes. But we know that the time that we put in now, just like what you're saying, the learning experience that we get now will better prepare us for what comes down the pike in a year from now, right? And what's interesting is that people are almost counting on us not running again for that position. And I'm not going to poke at Taylor, but this is going to be very relevant. I spoke to somebody on the library board, and they said, well, if you guys have more candidates that are interested, we'd love to see them. I said, you know what? I don't have more candidates. I have the same candidates, and I'm going to ask the same candidates to run again in 10 months because they're the right people for the job. don't discourage the candidates that I have just because you guys made a bad decision and you wanted to give the olive branch out to the left. I said, I'm sending the same candidates. That's who gets my vote, right? And I would say to those candidates, you need to go back and don't allow them to use excuses or your passion for another topic, defer their judgment on you for the library, right? So this goes across the board. If you didn't win the school board election in 2022, we'll go back in 2023, because guess what? You already have name recognition. You already have something to build off. You have a foundational campaign to say, look, this is what I stood for then. I still stand for that now, but I'm even more excited about this, or more passionate about that. And by the way, I've been in the library 5 times in the last month and I don't like what I see. I'm coming back, right? So I don't want to see people complacent. I want to see them fight for the position that they feel that they fit for. So Taylor, I know that hits home with you, and it probably hits home for a couple of others, but these people are expecting you not to run again. And that, I don't like that attitude, right? So we need to push back against them. And I realize that these people that are saying that a bit naive. I know this particular individual does not sit on the left side of the fence, but she doesn't believe in fighters. That's why she wanted to put the olive branch out, because she's not a fighter herself, right? Well, guess what? We're coming at them. We're fighters. We're passionate. We believe in what we believe. We have our faith, and we believe in the Constitution. And they're trying to take that away from us. So I'm encouraging everybody, don't give up, keep pushing back.
The other thing is, you mentioned name recognition, and in this particular case, it's on a board. You're still elected by commissioners for a board. But one of the reasons they gave, in fact, the top reason they gave for selecting that particular candidate, right, was that she had applied before. Okay, that gave her some credibility.
Yep.
She's staying in the game. She's still there. So guess what happens if you apply again? The next time you can say, you know what? You said you gave it to her because she applied before. Well, I've applied before. So look at me now, right? Same thing for running for office. Yes, I ran. And you know what? The people who got there didn't perform the way they said they would. They didn't perform the way we expected them to. And that's why I'm running again. So this gives us an opportunity to critique the people that they've selected, and really watch them closely. Because if they continue to operate in the fashion they have, whether it's at the library board and they're being uncivil, or if it's, in government and they've failed to act on any of their decisions, or what they've tried to do, if they've tried to push an agenda that's just been dropped, they are ineffective.
Yeah.
Rod,
let's talk about the structure of a board for a minute, because we have a lot of people, running for school board, running for library board, and the different boards around the country. In my professional opinion, when I look at the structure of the board and what boards are designed for, they're designed to bring in a variety of opinions based on those people's professional or life experience, right? So when I hear somebody say, well, we didn't pick this person because we'll just use the library as an example because we're in that zone, right? Well, this person has never worked for a library. This person hasn't been in the library circle. Great, that's the person I want, because they're going to bring something from the outside to this board mixed with the other board members, whether that's 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever the number is. They're going to bring that experience to this board and bring outside value, right? It's my opinion that underneath that board, you have a director or a superintendent and their team below them that bring the specific experience to the project, right? And they should take their problems up to the board and say, hey, this is a challenge that we're running into. Oh, by the way, I've got experience over here budgeting with the corporate office that I worked for 10 years in accounting and finance. Let me bring that to the table, right? So I think that when people elect because they're experiencing that specific area for a board, they're making a grave mistake and a disservice to the board itself. And if I was a candidate, I would bring that up. Matter of fact, when I ran for the school board, I've never worked for a school in my life. Now I'm on school board and I'm a teacher. Imagine that. But they said, well, what experience do you bring to the table? I said, well, first of all, I've raised over $12 million for one of my companies. So if the school is looking to raise capital to build a new, facility, or we need to raise money, I've got experience in that. Okay. Well, I've also managed people. So if we've got 25 employees, I've managed people. I know how to do that. I know to bring them up through the ranks. I've done marketing. The list goes on, all the things that I can bring to the board that has nothing to do with me actually working at a school. And that is the value that somebody from the outside can bring. So please don't be deterred from running for a board seat, and use your outside experience as a benefit to you joining the board.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. Two things. I will actually use some pop culture, but first, from a business standpoint, who goes in and fixes broke, sick, unworking corporations? It's not the people in the corporation. Right. They call in outside eyes. They call in somebody else, a fresh set of eyes with a different perspective, to come in and identify problems they don't see because they're too close to it. And that's why we do, you mentioned it, that's why we have boards. We have boards to keep organizations from getting sick, right? And from breaking down and collapsing on themselves because they're surrounding themselves with, groupthink. You have to have that outside perspective. And that's what I love about our country. And breaking it down into the minutia. Yes, we have elected officials, but they get their insight and their information from boards. Mm-hmm. Boards are the eyes and ears of the elected officials. And yet that doesn't mean the elected officials have to listen to the boards. I mean, I've been an elected official and I understand how that works. And there have been times we have disregarded the opinion that came from a board, but they didn't understand the vision that we had. So sometimes you can be on a board, but if you don't understand the vision, the long-term vision, there's a disconnect. And I think the problem with, that particular situation was the leadership in the council I was in at the time didn't express that long-term vision well enough to the board. So what the expectation was. So, and it led to disruption, and that's never a good thing either. So the other thing I'll mention on that, and I said I'm going to bring in some pop culture, is a long time ago, a movie called Dave. And it was a dead ringer. I can't remember the actors, but a dead ringer for the current president, right? And the president falls ill, but he's not dead, but they need someone to come and stand in and be a prop. And this guy's not supposed to do anything, but he's an accountant, or he's got an accountant. I mean, he comes in and he literally fixes the country. Just a regular average guy that just happened to look like the president. Movie was called Dave, and he literally fixes the government because they couldn't control him. He was an outsider who came in, and he could have exposed all of them. They didn't want that, but he fixed things from an outside perspective. And he got his own friends to come in and help fix things. So that's what boards do. And people getting involved, regular people get involved in government to help fix things. That's our goal, to help keep this country, this democracy, functioning the way it was designed, and to take care of the minutia, the details that is required to run any business, any entity. So don't be afraid to get involved. And becoming complacent either on a board as a politician, or as somebody who is walking away from a failed election, the danger is the same no matter what. You have to stay involved. Once you're in the water, you're a lot more comfortable staying in the water than getting out, drying off. It's always harder to get back in the second time, right? Just like swimming. Well, maybe not in the warm waters of California, Southern California, but up here, you get out of the water, you don't want to go back in. It's like I did my stint.
Yeah.
Stay in.
Let's talk about, as it relates to complacency, the next step is, we've got an election coming up here in less than a couple of weeks, actually 2 weeks from tonight. What happens after the election, Rod? What steps do people take? Let's just say we do see that red wave that we're anticipating, and you've got November, December before people start taking those positions on. What steps do you think we as Americans should be taking in that 60-day window? I mean, it's the holidays, but man, I'm afraid to turn my back on the people that are in office right now.
Well, that's just it. We have to watch everything that's going on, probably even more closely, because how many lame ducks are you going to have? And they've got 2 months to get their last digs in. They've got their hand on the rudder right now. And so what we have to do as an elected citizenry is we have to be watchful.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to make sure we're holding our officials, elected officials, accountable, even if they're on their way out. That's when they can do the most damage. You think about it. when you fire an employee, or when you say, okay, you've got 2 weeks to pack your bags, you're out of here. That's the one you got to watch. It's when they're on their way out the door that they can create the most damage. So we need to be watchful and mindful. And the second thing is even if there is a red wave, we talked about this briefly earlier tonight, Jim. Even if there is a red wave, we have to be, I think, even more watchful, because let's just look at Montana for an example right now. We've already controlled, the governor's office and the legislature, right? And everything the legislature did that was important and prominent got overturned by a liberal court. And even if we get some of the conservatives on that court, they're still outnumbered. And so we're not going to be able to accomplish anything more than we've already accomplished. Expect the same result. Expect it's going to be overturned. Expect it's going to go back before them, and they're going to unwind it all. That's the expectation we have to walk in with. And the only way that's going to change is if there's enough public pressure and enough public outcry to put pressure on all the people that need to keep this thing moving in the right direction. So red wave or not here in Montana, and I think it's probably the same way everywhere else, we have to control everything from a freedom constitutional perspective. And anytime any of those three branches of government sway from that, we're going to have trouble. We're going to be fighting uphill and fighting again and again and again. We'll be fighting the same battle over and over. Let's fix this. Let's fix this for the next generation. That should be our goal. And it's going to take a couple of election cycles, not this one. It's going to take this one and another and probably one more. And a lot of these judgeships are lifetime positions. So, we really, really have to be diligent and keep our foot on the gas for the next generation, for sure.
Yeah, I think that you make a really good point. Now, I'm going to wrap up my side of this call here with this couple statements. And that is, first of all, what a missed opportunity, speaking specifically about the library board. I know for a fact that 3 moms with young toddlers or young kids put in their names for that position. Could you imagine the insight they could give the board through their children's eyes going through that library, right? Bring that back to the board, what their kids saw. They could literally be the voice of their kids, right? So what a miss there. But I just think, when we look to our elected officials and post-election and what you said, it's going to take a couple turns. I mentioned Whitefish. If Whitefish doesn't turn this election, I'm pretty damn sure it's going to turn the next one, right? And this is going to take some time to correct the issues that we've allowed to happen the last 30 plus years. And I know we've said this both before on these calls. We let this happen. We were focused on raising our families, making money, and putting our faith and trust into the government and the Constitution that it was being upheld. And it wasn't until recent years that we found out that it wasn't. And we have a severe amount of distrust in what the government's doing to us. So I'm hoping to get that back, or at least fight for it from my side, but we've got to make it right for my kids who are 6 and 8 right now. And it's 2022, right? So, Rod, it's a really good point. It's going to take some severe patience to get through a few cycles, and maybe we can correct this.
Well, and getting back to your point earlier, it's not just now till January. If whoever gets elected, however this turns out, it's going to be January, come January 1st, no matter what, whether it's a blue wave, a red wave, or no wave at all. If the entire system collapses, it's still going to be January 1st, come January 1st. What are we doing to prepare ourselves, to prepare our family for tomorrow? That shouldn't change no matter who gets elected. What we're doing, how we're conducting our life, should not change. Our values don't change. How we are doing our daily walk with the Lord, with our family, with our brothers and sisters, with our co-workers, that's what we should be doing tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that. but keep our sight on the governing body. They're our servants, not the other way around. We have to stay focused and keep our foot on the gas. That's my, and bringing this back to election, everybody out there who's running for office right now, you've got 2 weeks. You better make the most of it. You better be working. Get all of your other people working for you for that 2 weeks. Get on the phone, talk to people. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Jim, I think a missed opportunity is people need to be standing out with their signs and platforms and handbills outside of the major churches in your area. You know, if we can't get their support for these crucial issues, we're missing it. And if they can't get in front of the pulpit, if they can't get time and face to face, then stand out there on the curb and hand out handbills as people are coming and going. Give them donuts. I don't care. Hand them candy for Halloween. Get in front of people and keep your foot on the gas. And I'll leave it at that for my end. We got to keep charging forward. I've got energy to spare.
It's great advice. I chuckled for a minute because most of our conservative candidates are at church on Sundays, probably right where they should be and with their family. But to your point, it's a great opportunity to get the message out, because I feel like our pastors are doing us a disservice by not pushing through Constitution and biblical beliefs, you know, and standing behind them. So, Rod, do you want to introduce next week's call?
Yes, let's pull that up real quick. Next week we don't have a call because it is election time. Wait, October 25th. No, I apologize.
Yeah.
Looking at my schedule. Next week we have Chris Patterson. He's the Community Solutions Advisor in Spokane, Washington. And I'll tell you, Chris is an incredible gentleman, down to earth. Chris was raised in the foster care system. And during President Trump's administration, he was the #2 man under Ben Carson, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for Region 9. This was the #2 man under Ben Carson. And Region 9 is California, Arizona, Hawaii, Nevada, and all U.S. territories and commonwealths in the Pacific. And he is coming up with solutions for homelessness in the and it's not government related. So that's my tip off there. How do you solve this? You don't depend on the government. He is working with the 501c3s, and he's working with private businesses, concerned citizens, to solve the problem. And we are lucky to have him. This is a gentleman on the national scale, and he's going to talk to us about what he's doing. And all of our candidates, you know, I don't city, local governments here. We face that in Whitefish and Kalispell. We have issues with homelessness, and the narrative is all around there. What do we need to do to fix it? Here's somebody who's got his finger on the pulse, and things are working. This is a conversation that all elected officials need to be on. They need to hear this conversation. So, yeah, how's that for an introduction?
It's great. Thank you for pulling that together. I look forward to that call and hearing from them. By the way, I almost had Red Balloon work on tonight's show. We're going to schedule them for another time. Basically, they are a company that helps conservatives find jobs away from woke companies. So they've got some interesting things to say. So basically, there's a quote that says, workers have rights, and not just when they're choosing to reject pronoun nonsense. So they'll be on at a later date. They couldn't pull off tonight, last minute. I tried. So anyways, look forward to next week's call. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching these videos. And like Rod said, time to get on the gas. He's got lots of energy to push to the very finish line. So thank you.